Happy midnight, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Professor Moonshine's Redstone 101. In today's episode, we're going to be learning about both regular pistons as well as sticky pistons. Since they're so similar, I thought it wouldn't make much sense to split them into two videos. Let's go ahead and lump them into one video. Hopefully that's okay with you guys. Without further ado, let's talk pistons. We'll start with just a default piston, and this is a very simple redstone component. When a piston receives power, it extends its head, and when it doesn't have power, its head remains retracted. Pistons can receive power from pretty much every direction, except for the front. Pistons cannot receive power from the front where the piston head is. Now, when it extends, a piston is capable of pushing another block. So if we put a blue wool here and power the piston, we can see it pushes the blue block. And if we retract it, we can place another blue block, and it can push both of them at once. Pistons have a push limit of 12 blocks, so a piston can only push 12 blocks before it stops, and I'll show you guys that right now. So what I have here is just a simple circuit, and whenever we place a block in front of the piston's just going to instantly push it, and you can see if we hold down, the piston is going to keep pushing these blocks until it reaches its push limit, which again is 12 blocks. You could go ahead and count these, but I promise you it's 12 blocks. Now, for some blocks, when a piston extends, instead of the block getting pushed, the block gets broken. An example of this is a pumpkin. So if I extend this piston, you can see the pumpkin is broken and pops off. This is a mechanic that's often used in melon and pumpkin farms to harvest the pumpkins automatically. Another example of one of these blocks is sugarcane. So if a piston extends into sugarcane, the sugarcane breaks. And same with bamboo. Now there's a few other blocks like this. I'm not going to go through them all. You guys get the point. When a piston extends, sometimes it pushes the block and sometimes it breaks it depending on the type of block. There are also some blocks that pistons just can't move at all. An example might be obsidian and bedrock. Now the list of immovable blocks also contains all container blocks, so chests cannot be moved by pistons, neither can dispensers, also things like hoppers, furnaces, all of these are immovable by pistons. Now there's two kind of surprising outliers to this. Number one is that composters can be moved by pistons, and cauldrons, even when they're full of water, can also be moved by pistons and retain the same water level. So that's pretty much it for regular pistons. Let's go ahead and review what we learned about them. When a piston receives power, it extends its head by one block, and it can receive power from all directions except for its face. For most blocks, when a piston extends into it, it pushes that block forward, and pistons have a push limit of 12, so they cannot push more than 12 blocks at a time. For some blocks, when a piston extends into them, that block is broken. This is the case for melons and pumpkins, sugarcane, bamboo, and a few other blocks that I didn't mention. Lastly, there are some blocks in the game that are just immovable, and pistons cannot push these blocks at all. These are things like obsidian or bedrock, but also blocks that are containers, such as chests, barrels, dispensers, all of those kinds of blocks. Let's move on now and talk about sticky pistons. Sticky pistons operate in much the same way as regular pistons. When they receive power, their head extends, and when they don't have power, their head is retracted. They can also push blocks, and they have the same push limit of 12 blocks before they stop working. Now, the primary difference between a sticky and normal piston is that sticky pistons retract their block as well. So you can think about it like this sticky goop right here is grabbing onto this block and pulling it back. Sticky pistons can also reach out and attach to blocks that they're not already attached to. So right now, this sticky piston isn't attached to the blue block, but when we reach out, it attaches and it's able to grab it and retract it. And all the same rules from the regular piston apply to the sticky piston. It'll break things like pumpkins and melons, it can't move things like bedrock or chests, and it has a push limit of 12. The only difference is that it has a sticky head which will attach to the blocks that it touches. Now a sticky piston only attaches to one block at a time, so if we extend this and retract it, you can see it's grabbing onto this block, but not this one right here. Again, that's because sticky pistons can only be attached to one block that's directly in front of them at a time. The last cool property of sticky pistons that I want to show you is that when sticky pistons receive a 0 or 1 tick pulse, they do what's called spit out their block, and I'll show you guys what I mean by that in just a second. So we're going to set up a contraption to show this off. We're going to have an observer. Now observers generate a 1 tick pulse, so they're going to fulfill that requirement for the piston, and then we'll have a no block. And you guys saw in that clip that this piston extended and retracted super fast, and we can see that it left the blue block behind. If we go ahead and hit the note block again, the piston will reach out and grab the block, and you can see that for each time this piston receives a 1-tick pulse, it's either spitting out the block or grabbing it and retracting it. This is a super useful mechanic in tons of contraptions and circuits, for example the T flip-flop, which I'm not going to explain right now, but all you need to know is that this is a super cool mechanic that sticky pistons have, where when they receive a 0 or 1-tick pulse, they spit out their block. That's all I have to teach you guys about regular and sticky pistons. Let's go ahead and briefly review what we learned, starting with regular pistons. When a regular piston receives power, it extends its piston head by 1 block. This extension of its head can do one of 3 things. Either it will push the block forward with a push limit of 12, or it will break said block, as is the case for melons, pumpkins, and all kinds of other crops and items. Or lastly, it will be unable to push the block because that is an immovable block, such as obsidian, bedrock, or containers. Next up, sticky pistons. A sticky piston operates in much the same way as a regular piston. It has the same powering rules and the same pushing/breaking rules. The only difference is that a sticky piston will attach to the block directly in front of its head, meaning it can also retract that block in addition to pushing it. Now keep in mind that the sticky piston is only attached to that one block in front of it and not other blocks. Lastly, sticky pistons have the special property where if they receive a 0 or 1-tick redstone pulse, they are going to spit out the block that they are attached to. We saw this with the observer and the note block, where when the piston received a 1-tick pulse, it spat out the blue wool, and then when it received another 1-tick pulse, it reached out and grabbed it again. And that's pretty much it. Keeping all that information in mind, let's go ahead and move on to a quiz. Here we have problem number 1, and I want you guys to think about what's going to happen when I flick this lever. Now because you can't see, I'll just let you know that this piston is a regular piston, not a sticky piston. So I'll give you guys a moment to think about your answer. Feel free to pause the video if you need. Got your answer? Alright, I'll move on to the solution now. And if you guessed that the piston was going to push the blue wool by 1 block, you are correct. This is a fairly simple question, but hopefully you guys got it right. If not, I'll just go ahead and quickly explain what's going on. So recall that when pistons are powered, they extend their head, and this head extension can push most normal blocks. So when this piston receives power from the lever, it's just pushing this blue block by 1. Here's problem number 2. I want you guys to think about what's going to happen when I press that button. Keep in mind that buttons produce pulses. And second, I'll let you guys know that this is a sticky piston, not a regular piston. So go ahead and think about your answer for a second. Feel free to pause the video if you need. You guys get the idea. Got your answer? Alright, I will show you guys what happens. Now, if you guys said that the sticky piston was going to punch through the pumpkin, but then grab the white wool at the end because it's a sticky piston, you're correct. If you guys got a different answer, no worries, I'll go over it right now. So, as I said, this is a sticky piston. Now we know that pumpkins get broken by pistons, and we know that sticky pistons stick to the blocks they attach to. So when I press the button, the sticky piston extends, breaking the pumpkin, but then it also grabs the white wool from down here and brings it up. Now we'll move on to the final problem, problem number 3. Here's problem number 3, and I want you guys to think about what's going to happen when I hit this lever over here. And I'll fly around the circuit and give you guys a moment to see everything that's going on. Alright, got your answer? Let's go ahead and find out. And we see that the lamp turned on. If you guys got that right, congratulations, excellent job. If not, no worries, again, we'll just go over it quickly. So what's going on in this problem is that we have a redstone line that looks like it's headed into this redstone lamp, but it's incomplete. We're missing something here. And on this side, we have a regular piston, and when I flick the lever, it's going to extend, and that puts a block in the path of this repeater. That means that this block becomes powered, and thus the piston has completed the circuit and allowed the signal to pass on to the redstone lamp. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's episode on pistons and sticky pistons. If you guys have any questions about pistons, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll get to as many as I can. If you enjoyed today's video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, but no worries if not. I'll catch you guys in the next one, and as always, shine on, little stars.